Non-Alc is going through a meteoric rise, so we gathered 4 key brands from the sector together for a roundtable to discuss what that means for the future. Now, if everyone can say who they are and where they're from, Kraig, shall we start with you?
Sure thing. So my name is Kraig Rovensky. I'm the global brand ambassador for Drink The Pathfinder. I pay rent in New York City, but seem to live on planes these days.
I'm Bill Warnock. I'm the founder of Feragaia. I live between Scotland and Texas, so I also live on planes.
Hi, Ben Branson, founder of Seedlip and founder of Season, and I try not to leave the house and get on planes anymore if I can help it. Yeah, live in the English countryside.
Hi, Nick Crutchfield, currently in Seattle, but like the rest of these fellows, I tend to be somewhere else in the world about a month at a time. I'm the director of advocacy for Lyres.
Now, why don't we start with, do you think the non-alc sector can sustain the growth that it is seeing at the moment?
I think we're in the stage of non-alc that is seeing just an explosion of brands. I mean, we've been seeing it for a while now, an explosion of brands that is quite frankly unsustainable and is also quite frankly full of, in my opinion, products that just don't reach the goal that they should be. I think we're eventually going to see a culling of that will lead to like the brands that are truly number one caring about the product that they're putting out, but two like stronger just in general with whether it be trade or consumer. I think that there'll be a calling and a refining of that, and definitely as we're seeing just like generally better ways of creating non-alcoholic products, we'll eventually see like readaptations of the same thing that will lead to just better products across the board, which in turn will lead to access falling to the wayside that don't have the funding that other brands do.
I think it's happening, Craig. I think it's already happening. I think this consolidation of towards better quality, I think, and well funded with good expertise and the right intentions, I think it's already happening. Like if I think back to some of the, I don't know, the early brands that kind of launched 2018, 2019, some of them aren't around anymore. And I don't wish anyone any misfortune with business, but I do, yeah, I do think, there's 1,000, by my count anyway, there's like 1,000 new non-alc brands in this space. The one seems to pop up every week from another country all over the world, all happening at the same time. And there's such a massive spectrum and variety and quality and funding, expertise, etc., and motivations for wanting to get into this space that, yeah, I agree. It's kind of like the Wild West out there, and it will settle down, and it's starting to settle down, and the cream will rise to the top.
Do you think that people, and especially consumers, think that this is a really easy sector and that there's a lot of money to be made?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that those that think that this is an easy sector are being misled, especially if you're going into investing in this sector and think you're going to make a quick buck out of it. I think you have to go into it just like any other brand with integrity and mission goals that are achievable and realistic. I think that sustained growth in the category, as was aforementioned, is possible, but not for everyone. There's a lot of experts popping up in the field lately, especially in the influencing sphere. And I think I'm starting to chuckle a little bit at it because it's a little absurd, honestly. I think that there's
It's
a
the
lot that's going to happen in the next
5 minute expert, Nick, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
they've been
100%.
around 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, I just got into this category, but because I have X, Y, and Z, I'm now an expert. Like, if you're calling yourself an expert, we need to talk.
Just to jump in, I'd say from everyone on this call, and the brands and the people that have done well are evidence that it's not an easy category to jump in and get rich quick and overnight success. I think the trade recognizes that. And it'll be interesting to see from there's a lot of amazing startup brands in terms of blank piece of paper 5 years ago to sitting around the screen today But the categories and the brands and the companies which already exist and have been around for 10, 20, 30, 50 years and who are jumping in now, I'm interested to see which one of those brands do it right, and then which one of those brands are, quote, just trying to add 0.0 to the end of their current brand and, jump on the wave. Nature's like business in this category. When it's non-alcoholic, you really don't have much to hide behind. You got to be good, and if you're not good, then that wave will knock you over, I think. So it's really interesting to see who's gonna last long run for that one.
Has the sector grown up enough where it should almost be self-regulating?
I think that this call is part of that self-regulation, right? I do think there's, I don't know, of all these brands out there, I reckon there's less than 30, maybe less than 50 that I would happily invite to a summit of guys, let's just all get around a table and talk about the future of this space and what we need to do to ensure its longevity. Because the biggest shame would be if this category implodes on itself, right? Because the consumer and all of the trends and moderation and all the rest of it is all out there. It's all happening, and it's going to happen regardless of the five of us, right? So there is this amazing opportunity that a great idea and a great opportunity isn't let down, and we have a responsibility, or I feel a responsibility anyway. I don't know about you guys, but I do feel a sense of duty to uphold some of the standards and point out some of the dreadful things that go on in our space, so that of course we have a good category to be proud of.
Almost the middleman / police between the products which don't warrant that higher spend or that special moment in a nice venue are the buyers, and the hospitality venues which have a huge amount of faith and trust built up over many years. And obviously I'm well aware of how the market works. The good guy doesn't always win, but I think there's a lot of really good products. Well, as Ben mentioned, maybe 30 good products that really could be leading the category forward. And if the sort of buyer who is maybe being forced into getting an NA menu quickly done, it does it without putting the same attention you might do as spirits, cocktail, wine, beer, then there's a chance that we're sort of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back as a category. So I think everyone's got, because the customer at home, they don't have time to get home after a long week and study the goods and bads. They just got to trust the people. They treat like your 5-minute experts. They've got to find 5-year experts to really help them. So some categories of spirits are already victims of this, where too many brands have come in, and it's now sort of imploding a little bit because the quality's gone, but the brands are still coming.
But it is channel. Yeah, I'd be interested in your guys' thoughts on this. To me, the best channel for regulation is the on trade, right, and the on premise.
Yeah.
There isn't loads of space. Not everyone bothers with the on trade. It's hard. It takes a long time. It's slow. It's not the biggest volume driver and biggest volume occasion. But it's, as we all know, because I know you guys all place importance on it with your brands, it's a massively important channel for this category and for the longevity of this space. And so I'm not worried about the on-trade as a channel. E-commerce, total different story, right? When everyone can set up a website and an Instagram page and list their products for sale with zero kind of standards. I feel like it's a channel challenge more than a just total category challenge.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, I think bars and restaurants, bartenders and bar owners and stuff don't tend to put up with bullshit and don't tend to put up with mediocrity. And I think for consumers, it's still so new that they're just excited for anything, and that anything might not be that good, but they're just excited that it exists. And because so much of it's just being discovered, it all feels new and exciting. And then bars don't put up with just because it's new and exciting. It has to stand up, it has to belong there. And I think I think all of our products speak to that. They exist in bars for that reason. I mean, again, it's not there's not as much noise in that category because there's not as many brands trying to get into the bars, but it's where we'll see longevity.
A lot of I'd say that the challenge within the on-premise opportunity, which is definitely, we all agree, one of the biggest, is the diversification of the options. So all 4 of our brands could sit really well together, offering 4 fantastic different drinks. I think sometimes the appetite is maybe, all right, you've convinced me to do the category, but I'll do one brand, that's it. When actually there's a whole range of different high quality products out there, which, then the customer will become more enlightened, and, it starts to become more of a equal game amongst, the good guys versus that one spot which may be available.
So many bars still view non-alc as one single category, not a category of categories. So instead of thinking of all the ways, all the things, all the categories within the non-alc suite that you could build a drink menu of, I need one thing to put one drink on the menu, and it's they view it in the same as like, here's my whiskey cocktail, here's my gin cocktail. Yeah. And then you look at the back bar, and there's how many whiskeys, there's how many gins, and there's still only the one non-alc product. Yeah.
They just did a study in the UK in Bristol, and I'm gonna butcher it, but I'll give it a go. The kind of the simplistic idea is that basically they proved that if you offer people equally non-alc and alc great options, and you actually give non-alc, the right visibility in a menu on a back bar, so that it's really easy for someone to see and therefore choose, that loads of people will opt for the non-alc, right? And so, yeah, I do think it you look at back bars today, they're gonna look different in the future. We're just asking for a bit more space, and I think non-alc has managed to now, certainly in the US, UK, Australia, take some more space. The menus haven't got any bigger, right? We're just kind of balancing the options a bit more, and the back bar is probably the next bastion for that to happen, because it's already happening in retail, and it can happen on e-com sites really easily. So yeah, a bit more visibility in the on-trade. I think beyond the menu and occupying a bit more space on the back bar, I think would be a great thing for non-alc.
I think that the sober community has figured out a lot of the non-alc space and understands the drinks pretty well. I think it's the switching community, the 82% of people globally that are still psychologically programmed for bang for the buck. So, like, if I were to go to a whiskey bar and sit down and order a whiskey, if I was there with a friend that, I enjoy the flavors of things, a friend may not. And they're just looking for that 140 proof bourbon out of Central Kentucky instead of like a really nice balanced 93, 94 proof, right? So we're still psychologically programmed that quality is bang for the buck by how screwed up it's going to get me, right? Like how much of a punch it's going to pack. And I think that when you look at the switchers, we still haven't gotten to the point where we go, oh, it's not about how messed up I'm going to get. It's about how good the drink is and how great the experience is in which I'm experiencing this drink. I think there's a bridge that we've got to, there's a gap that we have to bridge there to get people to really understand the category a little better. Good drinks, reprogramming through marketing machines, because that's what programmed the other. Not everything has to have hibiscus and lime in it.
Yeah, it's post ABV, right? Like there is an era coming where we can just talk good drinks and taste and flavor, and the ABV is as important as, I don't know, the dietaries and the allergens, etc. And it's on that same level rather than not as important as if it's vegan or, sugar free or gluten free or any of those other kind of claims. I think when the ABV can move to the back of the bowl, that'll be a great thing.
Yeah, I've interviewed a number of bar leaders, I'll call them, across the globe for something I'm working on. I can't divulge what I'm working on, but I will say one of the questions that I've been asking is, do you list the ABV of a drink on your menu? And an overwhelming response go, no, that'll confuse the customer, which translates to, no, I'm scared to do that because then I'll have to reorder my menu, because people won't order the 33 ABV drink. They'll order the 22 or the 18 or the 12. And I think until we see enough people start to listen ABV, which is very easy to do for those of you watching, it's another hurdle that we've got to cross.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things, I'm a partner in a bar in Seattle, and it's working Maria Margot here in New York. And when we put the ABVs on our menu at a Maria Margot, the amount of people that were shocked that an old fashioned had that much more alcohol than an Aperol spritz is honestly like it's wild to me. That like people, because I think so many people still view it as like that adage of like a glass of wine, a glass of beer, and a cocktail are all the same.
They do.
And it's like, and that is so far from the truth. And like, in the beer world, there's been a lot of work in like showing different ABVs of beer, but for cocktails, like so many people just view it all as one thing. This is a cocktail. They all get me drunk. They all have alcohol. And it's like that, yeah, people looking at it and being like, oh my goodness, like how is that so much more? Yeah, it's just like, it's wild to me that is something that people are just learning.
It's
It's just
almost like a
choice, right?
propaganda works.
I was just going to say, you're giving people information so they can make an informed choice. Like this is that's all it is. It's just let's have great drinks, but be informed about what we're drinking and give people the choice and the tools and the information and the education, and then they can decide. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Go on, Tiff. Hit us with another question.
Are there players or aspects of the sector that are letting the sector down at the moment?
That's a loaded question, Tiff.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Loves a loaded question.
I think it's a bit of a tiff. I've always, because I'm sitting in a distillery where I've arguably invested more than I should have in that whole. Because I used to work in the top shelf dark spirit world, in the Macallan, etc. And so I've seen products which have really, intricate step by step supply chains and stories behind them, which is the reason they're 100 years later. So for me, that was such an important part of growing the brand. However, there's no reason that I'm right, if you know what I mean. Like, there's no reason that this is my journey towards creating a product, but that doesn't make me right or wrong in the world of capitalist system. So in my frustrations, I definitely sort of bang my head against the wall, going, "Why am I?" And this isn't some sort of subtle sales tip, So I would think, why am I putting so much in when a lot of brands I see around me are just very quick to market, our main unknown locations. They're doing a lot better than me, bigger volumes. Are they letting down the sector, or am I actually just fighting a battle which is sort of irrelevant?
I think there's space for lots of different production techniques. I think there's space for, where Seedlip is still very much focused on distillation and botanicals, right? That's its very simple premise. No plans to build a distillery, whereas we're just about to build a 750 square foot laboratory and production unit in the grounds of a monastery from the 1100s in the English countryside, because I have another project where we're going to make the product there, and that's the right thing to do for that project. That's not about being able to produce millions and loads of bottles and bottling halls, etc. So I do think there's horses for courses. Bill, to your point on, like, I don't think there is a right or a wrong way, but what I do take umbrage with is when people shortcut and when people don't call things spirits, but they don't touch things like distillation or their artificial flavors, and I don't have any specific names or examples, but I know if you're an RTD brand, people are not going to care so much about the production technique, of how you've made it, because that's probably not what you think about when you're thinking about cans and RTD products. So I do think there's just marrying the expectations of the space and kind of drink that you're creating with what helps consumers or the trade get a good understanding of what you're kind of about. And if you want to charge a lot of money, then you better make sure that there's a whole load of substance behind it. Seedlip's new product, Notas de Agave, is an agave style product and has been sort of born and bred in the US for the US audience as a US exclusive. But there's no pictures of me in the agave fields, right? I'm not on a motorbike anywhere, driving, with my buddies through the kind of agave field.
It's a little sidecar.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we wanted to celebrate that kind of tropical agave style flavor profile, and we can do that with distilling ingredients and blending them in really cool ways. So that doesn't really answer your question, Tiff, your loaded question. But I do, the one thing I take the biggest umbrage with is anyone calling anything a fucking mocktail, excuse my language, on both those fronts, swearing and the word mocktail.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've been in this space for 10, 11 years now, and that word is still knocking about. It's even getting used as brand name and knocking about, and it needs to go.
This is a battle that I am 100% with you on. I've changed my psychology about it a little bit, and I've come to embrace the mocktail so that I can drive a wedge between the mocktail and the non-alcoholic cocktail. And by doing so, I'm like, okay, you can have your mocktails, you can have your Shirley Temples, you can have your jungle juice with your foamy pineapple juice that's at the top. You can have all of those things, but they're not sophisticated. They're loaded in caloric value, and they are full of sugar. So if I can drive that wedge and get people to understand what a mocktail at its core is, and then direct them to a non-alcoholic cocktail, I think if we get people to identify one is one and one is the other, and I know that I'm about inclusive hospitality. I think that there's room for both on a menu, maybe one on a titties menu. I'm just saying that out loud. But I think if we can drive a wedge between the two words and get people to understand, oh shit, there's actually something besides a mocktail that's not alcoholic, that people can start to identify. Americans are very, very stubborn people, and we are very hard to change and direct. But on the other hand, we're also very loud and when we want something, and people are starting to understand that even in RTDs, they want stuff that's more natural. They want lower sugar. They want lower caloric value. So the RTD space will clean up a little bit. But getting back to your point, it's only going to matter to the people that it matters to, right? It's like something's only worth the value of which somebody's going to pay for it. And I think a lot of that is in that space. I also think that we're in two stages historically right now. We are in the prospecting stage, where I think we're getting towards the end of prospecting, or maybe at the height of it. I think that the four of us on the panel right now maybe understand the forecasting and where we are going, and we're kind of living there right now. But I think at large, we're kind of at the height of prospecting, so like a gold rush almost. Everybody wants their piece. There's a bunch of people that are prospecting that maybe shouldn't be, but everyone's going to have their go at it. And I get that. But historically, we are in the 1820s right now. We are at the point where the column still is being refined. There's adjustments being made to it. We're getting towards the patent still and the coffee still. We are in that range of technology in the 20s, 200 years ago, where things are improving. And by the time we get to 30 or 33, we'll have the absolute technology to make exactly what we want, how we want, and to bring these expectations that the public are setting for us forward. But we have to reprogram that bang for the buck thing. Not everything has to burn. Newsflash, people that are watching, good alcohol does not burn. I don't know where you learned this. Good alcohol will give you the hug, but then it cools. And it is bonkers to me that people are, I need to feel the burn. I'm like, no, you don't. That's not good. Drink too much damn moonshine. Jesus. So yeah, that's where I think we are with the good and the bad right now, from my humble opinion.
I like it, Nick.
Yeah.
Continuing Nick's 1820s analogy, do we need a sheriff?
No.
The tax man.
Does someone need to map the landscape?
I think there needs to be some categories of some kind to help consumers understand better. When you like, this is something I talked to Southern Teague about, and actually, Bill, was just on a podcast with Southern Teague talking about this recently as well. You're building brand identity for these brands, and for consumers to understand them, there needs to be some category of some kind where it's like, and to speak for us, it's like if I'm in a bar and I want a Pathfinder spritz, but they don't have Pathfinder, the bartender needs to know where to guide that person into. And without the categories and without clearly defined rules around them, it's really hard for bartenders to be able to teach a consumer where things are. And it's, like, if they don't have that product, where else can they go? And I think, like, there's obviously the easy ones, like non-alc gin and non-alc tequila and so on and so forth. But for the rest of it, like Seedlip and Feragaia, these things that are just spirits that are unique, they taste like they're themselves. There's nothing else like it. They still should be there's a category that needs to be made around them so that people can be like, oh, you're looking for something that is herbaceous and light or floral and blah blah blah. Like, how do you define that? Where else does that go? And I think that that's the only way that consumers are really going to like it. I think it's the next thing that needs to be done in the category for full growth, personally.
Yeah. If I would say that I would be against the sheriff idea, just because I'm not sure if, quote, the sheriff would know more than me, or know more than Craig, or know more than Ben. Again, who is right and wrong here? I mean, I think the buyers are really thinking in these sought after venues, chains, groups, when they're looking at what to give their millions of customers every year. I think there's a big responsibility on them to do a little due diligence, R&D, and make a decision which is fits the rest of their brands, our portfolio of food and drink. So I would hope that any product which comes out, which is just a downright lie or miss our direction, the market finds a way of exposing that pretty quickly. And so I'm pro the self-policing model, as opposed to giving one more person a badge and a gun when they might not be trained to use it.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Bill.
Yeah.
This is a minority David Goliath counterculture movement, right? That has, in beautiful ways, total freedom and first principles thinking opportunity to create unique, wonderful, amazing things using any technique, production process it wants. That is incredible and needs to be maintained and celebrated. And it's just about people doing things for the right reasons and doing things that are of quality. I don't know the ins and the outs of categories that are regulated, like bourbon, tequila, scotch, gin. I don't know how much of that regulation side becomes a massive distraction of constantly looking over your shoulder and policing and spotting and calling out and exposing, whereas bartenders and probably mostly buyers, certainly in the UK, with some supermarkets that produce their own non-alc spirits and massively underpriced and real shortcuts, really not helpful actually for the consumer or the buoyancy of that space on a shelf and for the category. So I kind of, I put a lot of responsibility and duty to the trade, both on and off premise, to be curating the best quality selections and being part of the education and the best first experience for the consumer. It's not the same as just putting booze on a shelf and going, consumers will figure it out. They kind of know. They understand what's going on. There does need to be an over-index, I think, in terms of supporting quality within space. But yeah, let's not restrict it.
Yeah, I think when you have a sheriff per se, you have to look at the intentions of the sheriff and the outside influences that will touch a sheriff. And Ben brought up a good point. When you look at governmental agencies that overlook alcohol regulations, they're influenced by anything and everything around them. While he gets thrown at them, demand gets thrown at them. Like, I'm not saying it's corrupt, but I kind of sort of am. It's the Oregon Liquor Control Board is a really good example of that, or the Pennsylvania Control Board. I mean, it's both of those are really good examples of that. Categorically, I think it's starting to kind of separate itself. So you've got like Dry Atlas, which is identified non-spirit adjacent items as nominals, which I'm not sure I like that word, but it's at least something right now. Then you've got adjacents, which would be like my stuff at Lyres, where we take a category and try to create something that pays great homage to the category, like the white cane to white rum. And then you've got functionals, I think, which are probably, like, I love what I do and I love what everyone on this call does. Functionals have me very curious because there's a lot of stuff being used as functional that I'm just not really. Like the kava stuff, like that's not good. It's not a good idea. So I think the functionals, if anything needs policing, it's when functionals come full force, and just
For sure.
insofar as to make sure that they're safe for people to consume en masse, because you're going to get that person that wants 5 or 6 of these things in a day, and that might not be a good idea.
That
Yeah, I think.
ABV levels, sorry, just
Mhm.
like there's just, we saw it in the US anyway with kombucha and people fucking realizing that they're drinking 4% kombucha and obviously not even being aware of that, and that's really bad. Where there's products I know in our space that are not, will not be testing from a technical micro and ABV level perspective, not putting the right QC processes in place. And that's where you get into all kinds of problems. And that I think is a real risk, right? I think that is a risk in this space when there isn't the adequate testing and QC processes. We do not people, we don't need that's a potential horror story for this space that it's really easily remedied.
I don't think there's a lot of education around it. Like I see some of these brands trying to get into bars, and if a bar is serving that drink, but they're not like if it just says it on the menu, no one knows what that means. But there's functional ingredients in them. That could be things that are messing with people's medications. That could be things that like someone might not know and might not want that. And I think that there is a lot of and I don't think it's necessarily all on the brands here. I think it's like education on a lot of different sides, but I've seen these on some drink menus before and pointed them out to bartenders and had this conversation, and the bartender didn't even that there was something in there that could be affecting their guests, and that to me is just like incredibly dangerous, and it's a ticking time bomb for a lot of different issues.
I think there's also like sweeps across to all sorts of plain, provenance washing, greenwashing. That filters across all consumer categories. So I think the market ultimately is the sheriff. If you're gonna stick your neck out, and you better be ready to have quite a defense, or offense. And that flips onto the education of what we do. And if I lose out to a brand which says the same things as me, but it's much worse, then it's my fault for not educating the customer well enough. Ultimately.
Yeah. Much like a liquor label and the regulations of liquor labels in the early 1900s, there might need to be some stuff put on insofar as like if it's a functional beverage, this is what this is what it does, this is what it, and so forth, because even in the age of Google, in the age of instant information, the consumer's not going to sit down and go, okay, oh, this has ashwagandha in it. What does ashwagandha do to me, Siri? Like that, like they're not going to do that. And furthermore, and this is taking a page out of Darcy O'Neill's book, what happens when these things get combined?
Yeah, that's the big one.
You have a compound. Yeah.
We've got a product in the UK that on the back it's got more warning labels on it than a bottle of alcohol, right? You are not allowed to drink this non-alc product and drive. You are not allowed to consume it if you are under 18. This is a non-alc product. You are not allowed to mix it with alcohol, and you are not allowed more than 3 measures of this product. Like, we don't have long enough to for me to get on my soapbox about the functional space, which I think is totally not the non-alc opportunity and is not. I don't even see in the non-alc space. It's a health and wellness kind of, vitamins, nootropics, all of that kind of world is not in our space. I am sheriffing that right now.
Yeah, agree, Ben. Yeah.
Because I think it's fucking dangerous. Just think it's dangerous.
Send me that, Ben. Send me that brand name afterwards. I haven't found that.
It feels like I'm gonna go drink 4 of them and drive. It's gonna be amazing.
It's gonna be amazing.
I do think that but listening to you guys talking and just separating out that functional space and going, well, then what are we talking about? We're talking about adult occasions, and we're talking about taste and flavor, right? That's really what we're talking about, socializing and people having
bringing
things
community together.
that
Yeah.
are delicious in their glass, they feel good about. Not
Yeah.
your wellness program in the morning, or your vitamins, or your buzz, or your mood altering stuff. Like,
Yeah.
really personal. Bartender's not going to keep a tab of that, I'm afraid. And way too many minefields to what you mix with, or what you had in the morning, or what you're going to have afterwards. Yeah, I feel
Well,
like we can separate that.
Yeah, I think it's a word which doesn't get used enough in our category is craft. This is a totally new category. There isn't a rule book. There isn't a guidebook of, hey, this is what they did in the 60s. People are having to figure out themselves, combining that wild innovation and crazy risk taking, but also aligning it with distillation, aligning it with traditional production methods, which give you what at least you know is a safe, good, honest product. So the word craft for me has gone missing slightly in this category, and is something which I think would help distinguish the brands which have craft and the brands which don't. As Ben was saying, suddenly I'll be talking to buyers or customers, and I'll be covering morning wellness shots to evening beers to wine lunch. I mean, I'm talking about almost like every drink in the in the dictionary, when actually I have a craft spirit. People have sort of lost track of where this category started and where it should be heading.
Well said, Bill.
To end up, are there good things that aren't getting enough attention?
Guys, if you don't mind, I'm going to get on a soapbox for about 30 seconds. I realize that we are all pros in what we do, but there's a very striking similarity between everybody on this panel. I would really like to see more and better attention being paid to the minorities and minorities that are making this space possible. This space is largely commanded by these populations, and the fact that we aren't talking about that more rattles me to my core. So they are a positive influence on what we're doing and how we're doing what we're doing, and it's beyond time to make sure that they are 100% included in the conversations as we move forward.
Well said, Nick. Yeah. I know we've actually been quite negative, right? Haven't we, on this call? And we've been a bit grumpy, and I'm consistently dissatisfied, right? But I do think that the fact this is now a $13 billion category across top 10 markets in the world from nothing is really cool. And the fact that the four of us can get on a call, and we're across different countries and with brands that are in momentum and growth, is amazing. And there is a lot to be proud of with this space, and there is a lot that is making a massive societal change, which is great. But yeah, it's just more to do, I feel, but a lot of good stuff in between.
I think obviously, it's such it feels like a heated race out there. Actually, you are correct, and the net positive impact of this category is so unspoken. Maybe you don't want to bang the drum about health and that alcohol bad, but the millions of people who are now drinking drinks which are good for you, safe, legal, etc., when previously the market just almost refused to provide. It's almost as we're fighting the headwinds to do this, which is a bizarre thing when actually this is one of the most net positive new consumer trends, probably ever.
I have a good friend that's a bartender in Vegas that I want to go visit. He's notoriously grumpy across all of his channels. And when I sat down, we were talking about the non-alc space. He's like, you know what? I'll stop with you because you're saving my friends' lives. And I think that's a really important northern light that we make sure we always guide ourselves by, is we're providing options for people that otherwise wouldn't have options and might, especially in the switcher category, might gravitate back towards less healthy habits instead of having what they truly want and being in a space where they feel comfortable asking for what they truly want. And the fact that we're able to produce that is why I continue to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, well said, Nick.
Wow.
And on that note, I will thank all of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tiff. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one, fellas. Thank you, Tiff.